All right, let's talk about something really cool. We're going to go beyond the screen, beyond the monitor, and step into entire worlds built from nothing but code. Today, we are breaking down the incredible technology of virtual reality, from a history that's way deeper than you think to how it's literally shaping our future right now.
So let's start with this one simple but kind of mind-blowing question. What if you could actually step inside a computer? And I don't just mean looking at a flat screen. I'm talking about being fully present in a digital world where you can look around, move, and interact with things like it was all completely real.
And that's right there is the core promise of virtual reality. The whole goal, the holy grail, is to create a feeling of presence. You know that deep gut feeling that you are truly somewhere else? It's not just about seeing a 3D image. It's about tricking your brain on a fundamental level into believing you are actually there.
Okay, so how does this magic trick even work? I mean, how can a bunch of pixels and sensors convince our very sophisticated brains that we're standing on Mars or swimming at the bottom of the ocean? Let's get into what makes the core experience tick. It really boils down to four essential ingredients that have to work together perfectly. First, you obviously need a believable 3D world to step into. Then you need total immersion. That headset has to block out the real world completely so your brain can buy into the new one. Number three, and this is crucial, is real-time interaction. If you turn your head and there's even a split second of lag, poof, the illusion is shattered. And finally, you need that multi-sensory feedback, hitting your eyes, your ears, and sometimes even your sense of touch to sell the whole thing.
Now, it's easy to think of VR as this super recent sci-fi invention, right? But believe it or not, the roots of this idea go back way, way further than you'd probably guess. This is not a story about the last 10 years. It's about a dream that people have been chasing for almost a century. Just look at this timeline. It shows you how long this has been in the works. We're talking mechanical flight simulators back in the 30s. Then in 1962, you get this wild machine called the Sensorama. It had 3D video, stereo sound, even smells. The first actual VR headset shows up in '68, the name gets coined in the '80s, and then we all remember those clunky but oh so cool VR arcade machines from the '90s. And just to give you some perspective on how far we've come, check this out. The very first VR headset was so enormous and heavy, it literally had to be suspended from the ceiling. That's why it got the nickname the Sword of Damocles. And what did you see inside? Not incredible new worlds, just simple, green, wireframe shapes floating in the dark. But here's the crazy part. Even back then, the vision was absolutely massive. Ivan Sutherland, the guy who built that ceiling-mounted contraption, wrote this quote 3 years before he even finished it. He wasn't just thinking about a better screen. He was dreaming of a room where a computer could control matter itself. I mean, that's basically the holodeck on Star Trek, dreamed up in 1965. So if this dream is so old, what changed? Why is VR really taking off now? What was the technological tipping point that finally dragged this idea out of the lab and dropped it right into our living rooms? Well, it was the 2010s. That was the decade when everything just clicked into place. Devices like the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive finally cracked the code. The screens got incredibly sharp, and the head tracking became so fast, we're talking near zero delay or low latency, that it finally got rid of that awful motion sickness that killed all the early VR attempts. And just like that, powerful, convincing VR was something you could actually own. And it wasn't just one thing. It was a total perfect storm of technology. Graphics cards got powerful enough to draw these complex worlds in real time. Then, thanks to the smartphone explosion, all those tiny sensors for motion tracking became super cheap and available. You combine that with powerful home computers, and suddenly you had the exact right conditions for the VR revolution to finally happen. So that brings us to today. And look, while video games were absolutely the Trojan horse that got VR into the mainstream, its true impact is now expanding way, way beyond entertainment, into pretty much every field you can imagine. Sure, entertainment is a huge slice of the pie, but VR is becoming an incredibly serious tool. Think about healthcare. Surgeons can practice a complex operation over and over in a totally risk-free environment. In the auto industry, engineers can walk around and even sit inside a virtual prototype of a car before a single piece of metal is ever cut. And in education, well, it's creating learning experiences we could only dream of before. So, what's the big takeaway here? It's that VR is evolving from a novelty, an entertainment device, into a fundamental platform. It's a whole new way for us to train, to design, to collaborate, and even to heal.
It's totally changing our relationship with digital information.
And that leaves us with one last pretty big thought to chew on. As this technology gets better and better, as these virtual worlds become almost indistinguishable from the real thing, what does that mean for our very definition of reality? That's a question we're all going to be answering together as we step deeper into this wild new frontier.